Hello. What's up, everybody? It's Yoshinator195 coming at you with another old school Black Ops 6 gaming commentary. And in today's episode, should you follow your dreams? It is a difficult question to answer because, one, I don't know exactly your situation. And more broadly, it can be an almost impossible question to answer. And it's one that I guess everyone gets asked of themselves growing up, and there's probably hundreds of videos and books on it. And I guess I want to talk about my experiences dealing with this kind of question, because for me, my dream is to be a filmmaker, to be like a director and a movie writer. But I come from an engineering background, which is a whole different can of worms. I can't remember the expression now, but it's just a whole different lane in the sense that it's just like one seems so logical, scientific, steady, stable, high earning, and the other one is like a creative, risk-taking fluke that just by chance could happen, but you have absolutely no sure bet on it. And no realization of like, how do I become a filmmaker? Like, yes, there's like a degree, but there's not necessarily a pathway. There's no graduate program for filmmakers out there, but there's a ton of jobs for engineers, and there's like structures, routines, so all of that. But coming back to you and thinking about like, should you follow your dreams? I think what I've learned is that growing up, dreams can be annoying in the sense that they could kind of dangle this carrot in front of you and always make you feel like a piece of shit because you never achieved it. And it often gets conflicted when you think about other people who have achieved their dreams, or like you look at celebrities. Or for me, it's difficult because I look at famous filmmakers and I'm like, I get envious and jealous, and that is such a negative thing to have. So that when you see other people that are more successful and achieving their dreams, you feel like a piece of crap about yourself. But more often than not, there's something called survivorship bias, in the sense that you're watching people who have survived endless amounts of turmoil and poverty and risk taking, and it wasn't all smooth sailing to then get to where they are now. And also there's things that happen behind closed doors where you're like, is that celebrity really happy? Is that famous filmmaker really stoked to be there with all these cameras in their face, etc.? It goes on. You never know what's happening behind closed doors. So it can be like a mirage. And I think, when you have that dream mentality, and you're like, damn, like, am I aiming too high? Is just like, why do I have this unrealistic fantasy? And sometimes I was thinking to myself, I think I'm more in love with the fantasy of being a filmmaker. And I'm seeing all these success stories out there. Like, man, that guy, look at the Raka brothers. They're YouTube brothers that have made 2 amazing Australian films, Talk to Me and Bring Her Back, and they started on YouTube. Why can't I do that? I do YouTube. What a piece of crap I am, But then I don't see all the YouTubers out there that fail and that do shitty jobs and just to get by while they try to feed their creativity. So I remember watching a video from CGP Grey a long time ago, who I love as a YouTuber. And if you haven't seen, I think it was like a Q&A, and he said like a biggest misconception or something that people do in life that they shouldn't do is like, do what makes you happy, follow your dreams, like do the things that are gonna give you the absolute joy and bliss of your life. Like, that's like a sure guaranteed way for failure, because really what you should be doing is kind of experimenting. Where do you find your life force being most rewarded and interested in the sense that you should go out fishing and fish at different lakes, see what kind of comes up, what are the nicest places to fish, what gives you joy fishing. Maybe you get more fish, maybe you get less fish, but which lake do you go to gives you the most rewarding sense of accomplishment. And that's how you should treat your life, in the sense you should, especially when you're younger, try a lot of different things, diversify, to find your kind of niche thing that you really, that's your jam, you know what I mean? And then start going back time and time to this lake to fish more and enjoy that job. And that's it. And I really like that kind of resonant, that statement there, because I've done that. I've experimented a few times. I've failed. I've found multiple jobs that just weren't for me, but at least I gave them some sort of a shot. And I think it's important to at least try something in that sense. But I also want to add that recognize that your whole career, your whole life doesn't necessarily have to be tied to just one job. A lot of people out there have that sense where they're like, there's nothing else I want to do in my life. I can see myself growing old doing this. I want to be a nurse, and that's all I'm going to do. And I'm happy with that. And that's great. Yeah, but be okay with, like, there's also people out there that have done something for like 10, 15 years, and then they transition. They switch something else. They become something else. They almost like adopt like a new identity. And I was thinking about like life in the sense that your life is kind of a collection of potentially different identities and different persons of who you are, who you were. You're someone, not just a child and a young adult, but someone who played sports while they were younger, to now they played this, or there's someone who's a father and they're watching and they're a coach now. They're someone coaching sports instead of playing it. It's like a very dumb analogy, but you go from being the sports player to someone who helps others play the sport. Or you get older, you become a grandfather, and you go through essentially different phases, and your life is a collection of different phases and chapters, if you will. And I think I really kind of like that idea, because like you would never be, you could enjoy one job and then move on to something else. It kind of reminds me of Childish Gambino, who like Donald Glover, who just like was like, look, I think I'm happy to end Childish Gambino with his last album, Bando Stone, because that character's kind of done. I don't want to do something else. And he was always like, I look back on his career, and like you go from he was like a writer to doing a bit of stand-up to doing musician to being an actor, and I think maybe now he might do some directing, I don't know, but like he had these different chapters where like he liked exploring his kind of range, and not everyone's like that, but that's one example where you don't have to be tied to one job kind of forever. I also think it's important that, and I'll wrap it up here in the last 5 minutes, that doing what makes you happy and trying to constantly always seek for something like artistic or creative, or every minute of my life has to be, joyous, doesn't always have to be the case, because, there's this great article, I'll see if I can find it, where like sometimes the best life is like a balance for those that, maybe this is more targeted towards creative people, that have financial stability with like a day job, but then they do something creative on the outside. And like for me, I'd be working a day job, but then I'd come home, or I'd be thinking about YouTube videos, and then I'd make YouTube videos in my spare time. And I actually kind of like that balance, particularly like when I was doing my PhD in engineering. I kind of enjoyed having both of them. Like I was getting the best of both worlds, and it was almost like there was only so much I could edit when it came to videos for YouTube. Like I'd get tired or bored of editing a YouTube video for after 2 hours, and I need to have a break. And then my mind, I really liked switching to doing something like analytical, like engineering, and it was also like paying me, so I didn't have that much financial stress, and like having work, and my friend always says this expression that work expands to fill the time. When you have like a certain job and you're going to be there for 8 hours, then you come home, you now have more of a deadline you only have 3 hours after work to complete something, versus say you had no job and you're unemployed. You really need to have the discipline to do something. And maybe I'll talk about this in another video, but you can have this open-ended goal where just like you just keep doing some project and it just keeps going on and on. But if you had actually a deadline and pressure, you get way more done in that time. And that's kind of actually the best. That's why the best of both worlds can work, and why it's actually so much better to potentially have that day job that might not fulfill your soul as much, but it still rewards you outside of, life, and enables you to live, and you have like a place and rent and there's bills to pay, and maybe you go on holidays from that money. But then you also have like this creative outlet, and you're like, man, this is actually, I like this. Like, I can't imagine doing this under the pressure of like, I got to pay the bills. you know what I mean? And like the noble and in the noble vision of the struggling artist, I don't know if it's definitely maybe noble, but it's not very glamorous. And it's something that I don't know if I could do, and I think probably a lot of artists can't do that. You picture someone like Vincent van Gogh, just kind of like had like, he struggled in his life, and from what all accounts that I know, he didn't enjoy it. He had like a miserable life, but doing art was kind of his outlet. Now I have no clue if he had a day job, would his art be as good? Not sure. You can't do that experiment again. But would he want it any differently? I don't know. I like to think that he'd want something a little bit differently. He wouldn't want it to be as miserable, because you look at someone like Charles Dickens, who was like kind of like a celebrity, but he was comfortable, and he still spit out great work. So I kind of believe that like maybe an artist can still do good work no matter what. But for me, I'm just like, I don't want to struggle in life, and in the sense that like financially really be stressing and worried. I want to comfortably struggle. I want to do things that are just out of the grasp of my reach. Something that's like really like, whoa, I'm really glad I tried to do that, because that was really difficult, but not something where like I'm freaking out. How am I going to pay the bills? Like that endless worry. That's what leads to just depression, anxiety, and all negative things that just come about from that. And that's where I don't want that. So for yourself, I'll wrap it up here. The takeaway is to think about the balance of the best of both worlds, where maybe you could do something that isn't fulfilling for you, for your soul, but does reward you financially to give you some stability, that you can do something outside of that that's enjoyable. As we get the victory dub here, we're going to end on a positive note. That's like maybe the 4th victory that I've uploaded to this channel. If you've seen the videos, it's just nothing but losses. But hey, look at that. There you go. You go through the losses to have a win. But let me know down in the comments below, what are your thoughts on this topic? Should you follow your dreams? And if not, maybe should you do something that is a bit more financially stable while also accomplishing something that's rewarding for your soul? Let me know. That's it for me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.